Hello, Jake. How are you today?
Hi Emma, I'm doing well, thanks. Ready to talk about something interesting?
Absolutely. Today, we'll discuss politics and economics vocabulary. Are you familiar with any of this vocabulary?
A little bit, yes. Words like policy and reform sound familiar. What else are we covering?
Great. We'll also explore inflation, deficit, and legislation. These words are important in understanding current affairs.
Sounds like a lot of fun. Let's dive in.
Let's start with a little grammar introduction. We'll be using these words in sentences about current affairs.
Got it. So, we'll talk about what's happening in the world today.
Exactly. For example, I might say, the government announced a new policy to reduce inflation.
I see. So the policy is the action taken by the government?
That's right. A policy is a course of action or strategy. Here's another example. The recent reform aims to improve healthcare access.
So, reform means to change something for the better, right?
Exactly. And we could also say, the legislation was passed to control the national deficit.
Legislation is the act of making laws, am I correct?
Yes. And deficits refer to the amount by which spending exceeds revenue. Here's one more. Inflation is rising, affecting the economy.
Inflation means that prices are increasing, which can be tough for consumers, right?
Absolutely. Now that we've introduced the vocabulary, let's practice through a dialogue. Are you ready?
Yes, let's start.
What do you think about the recent policy changes regarding education?
I think the new policy could help improve outcomes. Education is so important.
Definitely. Many students are affected by these reforms. Do you have any ideas on what might be included?
Yes, maybe some new funding programs to reduce the deficit in schools?
That's a good point. Funding is crucial. And what about inflation? How could it affect education?
Well, inflation can make it harder for families to afford educational materials. Prices go up.
Exactly. That's why legislation around educational funding is vital. It can help manage those costs.
Right. And without proper legislation, students might face even more challenges.
Very true. How do you think the recent economic situation affects these policies?
I think it forces the government to be more creative with their reforms. They must adapt to new challenges.
Well said. Adapting is key. Do you think we will see more changes to these policies soon?
I hope so. The public needs to see improvements. Otherwise, trust in legislation might fade.
Trust is essential for citizens. Otherwise, they may disregard important policies.
Exactly. And a lack of trust can lead to more significant problems, especially if deficits increase.
Definitely. Let's move on to some explanation of the vocabulary now, shall we?
Sounds good. I'm eager to learn more.
All right. First up, we have policy. This refers to a course of action adopted by an organization or individual. For instance, the environmental policy was reviewed last month.
That's useful. What about reform?
Reform means to make changes to improve something. An example would be, the reform of tax laws is necessary for economic growth.
Got it. And inflation.
Inflation refers to the general increase in prices and fall in the purchasing value of money. For example, inflation rates are at an all-time high this year.
That makes sense. Now, what about deficit?
Deficit is when expenses exceed revenue. For instance, the country is struggling with a large budget deficit.
And lastly, legislation.
Legislation means laws that have been enacted. An example could be, new legislation was introduced to tackle climate change.
Perfect. Now I feel much more equipped to talk about these topics.
I'm glad to hear that. Let's do a vocabulary exercise to solidify your understanding.
I'm ready.
Okay, here we go. Can you use policy in a sentence related to current affairs?
The new health policy was designed to address COVID-19 issues.
Excellent. Now, how about reform?
The reform in public transport improved the city's traffic conditions.
Great job. Now can you use inflation?
Inflation affects how much people spend on everyday goods.
Fantastic. What about deficit?
The budget deficit made it hard for the government to fund new projects.
That's perfect. And lastly, how do you use legislation?
The new legislation was necessary to ensure safety in public places.
Excellent work. Let's review what we've learned today.
Sure. What do we need to review?
First, can you name one piece of vocabulary we covered?
Yes, policy.
Correct. And what does deficit mean?
It means when expenses are greater than earnings.
Well done. Can you use inflation in a sentence?
Inflation can make it difficult for people to afford housing.
Great sentence. What is legislation?
It's laws that have been passed by a legislative body.
Absolutely right. Lastly, can you explain what reform means?
It means to change something to improve it.
Spot on. I'm proud of your progress today. Let's wrap up.
Thanks, Emma. I learned a lot.
I'm glad to hear that. In our next lesson, we'll explore the vocabulary of culture and traditions. I hope to see you then.
Looking forward to it. Bye, Emma.
Goodbye, Jake. Take care.